Audio on demand from Vision Christian Media.
Coming up today on The Story.
In grade 11, we just did a fun little thing on the way to school. But there was a Christian on the tram who told the headmaster. I and a couple of others were organising the punishment of this Christian. So various people were punching him, others were ringing him up 2 o'clock in the morning, others harassing him. But in my case, I was going to go, I wanted to disrupt his youth group.
The Story.
G'day, I'm Jimmy Colfax. Welcome to The Story. Well, it never ceases to amaze me how God can completely change the direction of a person's life. For example, when Jim Rawson was a young man, he described himself as being bitter and twisted. At one point, he even attended a church youth group with the intention of getting revenge. A classmate had gotten him into trouble a few weeks before, and he wanted to punish him. However, something unexpected happened while he was sitting in that group and was asked to open the Bible. Today, we'll find out how the course of Jim's life completely changed as he shares his story with Eric Scatterbo.
Jim Rawson, welcome to the program.
Hi, Eric. It's really nice to be here.
Glad to have you with us. And so you had evil intentions in your heart when you attended that group. Is that right?
Yes, I did. Doing some end-of-term, sort of what I would regard as mild shenanigans. And this Christian bloke put me into the headmaster of school. My dad got a letter, asked him to withdraw me from the school. My cousin was suspended. And I got a Saturday morning detention. And so a number of other people did the same thing. And so we decided we'd punish this guy. So we had various different ways of punishing him. But in my case, I was going to go and disrupt his youth group.
Okay, well, we're going to come back to that story. Mm-hmm. We'll just kind of hold people in suspense to find out what happened next. But let's go back and find out what led up to that point. What is your background?
My background is a very part-time Anglican mother, probably weddings, funerals and marriages, that sort of thing, mm-hmm. Births, deaths. And my father was a cultural Jew. Now,
what do you mean by cultural?
Well, he was in a Jewish company, and so he'd do the Jewish stuff when he had to in the company. His father's name was Rawson, mm-hmm. and he was a full Jew, but his mother was a part-time Anglican as well.
But your name is Rawson.
Yeah, that's right. We changed our name from Rosenheim to Rawson in around about 1910.
Is that common? Why did you change it? Or why did they change it, I should say?
Well, I wanted to anglicise it, and there's always been a lot of programs against the Jews.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, discrimination.
And so they were not that favoured often in the West, and so they were used to that sort of persecution, and I suspect that was it. And I think he probably wanted to get away from some of the restrictions of the Jewish faith because he was somewhat of a playboy.
Oh, okay. Now, you were born and raised where?
I was born in Dubbo, mm-hmm. and then during the war, when my father was fighting in PNG, my mother moved down to be closer to when he came back to Australia. So she moved down to Sydney, and that's where we stayed.
Okay. And so your childhood?
Well, my father and mother thought a little bit of religion was good for the kids, mm-hmm. so they sent us to Sunday school, and my first memory of Sunday school is of this thing that could make 2 bits of paper stick together. Yes, it was fantastic. That's what I can remember. It was a
That's
stapler.
What you can remember about Sunday school?
That's all I can remember from that Sunday school.
Something that could make 2 pieces of paper stick together.
Yeah, stapler. A stapler.
Stapler. Well, so deep theological beginnings.
In the second Sunday school I went to later on, we had to learn the Bible verse before we were allowed to read the comics. And as soon as Sunday school was over, we went straight off for a surf. And so it all sort of got lost in the surf. The only thing I can remember is really 2 Sunday school teachers, and I liked singing.
Okay.
That's about it.
So not a deep spiritual background.
Not a heavy-duty spiritual experience, no.
Okay, but a theme throughout your life, I guess you could say, you told me this before we started to record, is a strong sense of justice and revulsion against injustice. Is that right?
That's correct. And so this has worked to my demise in many situations, but the first really major situation was my first day at high school when I was supposed to have a book, but the bookshop at the school had run out of them. And so instead of the teacher listening to me, he just gave me a punishment immediately.
No, wait. So you're supposed to have the book. You don't have a book through no fault of your own because they didn't have it.
That's right.
And you were punished?
I was punished. I ended up with a Saturday morning detention. And,
For not having that book that you couldn't buy?
That's right. And so it twisted me. I thought, so I spent my high school trying to punish the school. But
you wanted revenge.
I wanted revenge.
I'm starting to sense a theme here.
That's right. I wanted revenge.
Yep.
And I got my revenge, I guess, on that teacher because I punished him so badly. And I had a considerable ability at organising. So I organised the whole class against him.
Oh, wow.
And he left the school at the end of the year. But it set me on a really bad pattern and it sort of twisted my thinking. Mm-hmm. So the school probably got its revenge by... I could never make the A team in the football because I was always at school on Saturday morning doing punishments instead of playing
just a practical matter there.
That's right. They didn't want a person that was that unreliable in the team.
So you had this anger in your heart for years, it sounds like.
I was burning with anger at the school. I hated the school.
Okay.
It was very posh, and I'm not a posh sort of bloke. It just didn't work for me.
Now, are we to the point in the story where the Bible study comes in or not yet?
Yeah, I guess that'll work. And, in grade 11, we just did a fun little thing on the way to school. Very simple. We just removed our coats and ties and hats.
Which is against the rules.
Against the rules. Ran across the park and caught the tram on the other side of the park. But there was a Christian on the tram who told the headmaster, and then it led to me getting a Saturday morning detention and my father getting a letter asking to withdraw me from the school. But, of course, this was on top of all the other stuff I'd done. Mm-hmm. And my cousin was suspended and other people got punished as well. So I and a couple of others were organising the punishment of this Christian, which we should never have found out who it was that put us into the headmaster.
But you found out that the person who told on you was a Christian young man.
He was in our same grade, in our class. Yeah.
And you were going to get your revenge.
That's right.
So what did you plan?
So my plan, so various people were punching him, others were ringing him up at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Well, really?
Others harassing. But in my case, I was going to go. I was used to disrupting the class, so I wanted to disrupt his youth group.
So that was your plan?
That was my plan. So I went with evil
intention in your heart going to a youth group.
That's right. But when I got there, instead of it being a meeting which you can disrupt, they broke up into little group Bible studies, about 7 in each of them.
So your whole plan of trying to disrupt the bigger group kind of went by the wayside.
Yeah, so I'm sitting there like a dummy with this Bible open, and we're looking at 1 Thessalonians chapter 1.
And you're thinking to yourself,
well, I was thinking, this is not the way it's supposed to go. That's right. But as they went through the Bible study, I came under conviction. Now, I've read that passage multiple times, but I can't work out what it was that actually convicted me.
So the Holy Spirit obviously worked in your heart?
That's the way it was. It must have been. I didn't know anything about the Holy Spirit at that time. So my great prayer was I went home and I said, God, make me like those Christians. So I didn't understand the gospel.
Just from that one exposure.
That's right.
One Bible verse, or just was it the Bible verse, or was it the people, or what do you think it was?
I don't know. They were quite passionate as they were going through it. I could tell they were different from me. They weren't twisted. And I thought,
they weren't twisted like me. That's what you're saying.
That's right. I was twisted.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it affected all my studies. I was failing. I went from a special A class
because you were seething with anger. It sounds like.
Yeah, that's right.
And you were going to get this guy.
That's right. I was going to get him, but God got me instead.
Yeah.
So I didn't really know what I was praying because that's why I said, God, make me like these Christians. Didn't understand the Christian message.
You just knew there was something about them that you wanted.
That's right. That's right.
What happened next?
Well, not much. Not much really at all. I started going to the youth group and to church. And strangely, I stopped swearing. They were the only things.
Stopped swearing?
Yeah. I didn't stop fighting with my parents. I didn't start to study because I'd been so twisted that I hadn't studied. I'd gone from a special A through, in those days the classes were streamed. I was in a special A class. I ended up in the E class, and so I failed. I failed to graduate, to go to university. Yeah, so it really twisted and mucked my life up. But Christianity, I didn't really understand the message or anything surrounding it, so it didn't really change my life.
You're listening to The Story. Today, Jim Rawson is sharing his story with Eric Scatterbo. As we just heard, he described himself as a bitter and twisted young man with revenge in his heart. But God planted a seed. We'll find out what happens next when we return.
The Story. If this program has highlighted something you'd like prayer for, we'd love to pray for you. Call 1-800-PRAY-FOR-ME. That's 1-800-772-936. It's a free call. Or text 0401 132 888.
Hi, I'm Jimmy Colfax, and this is The Story. Today, Jim Rawson is sharing his story. As we heard before the break, Jim described himself as a bitter and twisted young man who went to a Bible study not to learn, but to disrupt it. But God planted a seed in his heart, and now we'll find out what happened next in his life as he went off to attend university.
Yeah, then I went to university, and it was in 1959. And the Billy Graham Crusade was coming, and so somehow, I don't know how, somebody signed me up for the counselling classes. I didn't understand the gospel, so I don't know how I was going to counsel somebody else,
But you were open to spiritual things at the time?
That's right. Mm-hmm. And I had a guy called Charlie Riggs, and he really set out the whole plan of salvation, the whole gospel message, A 14-week course was a Christianity Explained in 14 weeks.
Wow, which would be perfect for you.
Perfect for me. By the end of it, although I was a Christian, I now as a Christian had actually understood what Christianity was about. Mm-hmm. Now this is around about May 1959. Up to this point, so I had got into university by doing matriculation exams.
Even though you were a poor student?
Yeah, that's right. So what had happened was, I didn't get in from my high school, but I did the university set exams. And so I got into New South Wales University through their exam, and I got into Sydney University exam. And that's because I really studied for 2 weeks. But then when I got to university, I'd never studied. I hadn't read any of the lecture notes. I'd copied other people's assignments and all the rest of it.
You didn't know how to be a student.
I didn't know how to be a student. But suddenly I knew that I had to honour God by trying to pass exams. But because I didn't know how to study, I couldn't catch up. So by the time, in those days, there were 100% exams at the end of the year. And for the whole year's work. 5 exams, 2 maths exams, 1 chemistry, 1 physics, and 1 geology exam. And I failed 4 out of the 5 subjects, which meant I failed outright.
Wow.
Any subject you passed in those days, you couldn't carry forward. You had to do it again. Fortunately, my father was prepared to pay for me to study another year. So at that
really,
stage,
so I mean, he could have.
He could have said that's the end, but he didn't.
Yeah.
But my attitude had changed
Could he see that?
because I knew the message. I don't think he could see that because I was still fighting with him and whatever. And he still regarded me as the old Jim, which I still was to a large extent, because it took a long while for Christianity to get rid of the twisted thinking in me. It took years to get rid of that school twistedness.
Thank goodness that God is patient.
He is patient, thank goodness. But then I never failed an exam again.
Okay, so you got a second chance.
I got a second chance.
And wow, did you take advantage of that?
I took advantage of it.
And did you take advantage of it? What happened next in your university career?
Well, I did Bachelor of Science honours and in chemistry, And then I did PhD in chemistry. Yeah.
So this is somebody who barely got through high school. You're going for a PhD?
That's right.
So what happened? You just really found that you enjoyed school, or what explains the turnaround?
Hard work. I don't think I was particularly brilliant, but I really wanted to honor God. And so I worked really, really hard.
So your personal faith, obviously, at this point, was really a big
my
part of
personal
your life.
faith is growing,
Mm-hmm.
and people kept on giving me opportunity. Just little opportunities, like leading on a Sunday school camp. There was about 9 kids on or 8 kids, and I had to give a talk. Yeah, I was scared silly, but it gave me this opportunity. And 2 kids decided they want to follow Jesus. And I thought, oh, maybe God can use me.
Wow.
And a guy took me on a hospital visit, and I didn't know we were going to have to give a talk. They numbered us off, and I was about number 6 out of about 11. And then I realised that at each ward, someone would give a talk. Then I noticed it was number 1, then number 2, number 3. Well, goodness me, this is going to come to number 6. So I listened desperately to number 5. And then when all the people went out and I had to give the talk because they moved on to the next ward, I just gave exactly the same talk that the guy before me had given. I was petrified.
But you paid attention.
I did. When you're under threat, the mind is particularly focused.
Yeah. So you had these opportunities to share,
right.
and you found it was successful? I mean, it was having an impact in people's lives?
That's right. And the thing, it just helped me to grow. It took a long while to get rid of the twistedness. Mm-hmm. I think there's still some vestiges of it there because
Are you trying to say you're still a little twisted?
I think so, yes, because I still hate the status quo.
Well, you still hate injustice.
I really hate injustice,
Mm-hmm.
and I like to challenge the system because nothing's perfect.
This is why you and I get along so well. I can identify.
That's right. Yeah, and like, there's always things wrong with something. You can always make things better.
Yeah.
And so I'm never satisfied. So even if I write a paper on something, I'm always want to improve it. I cannot read it through without improving it. Or I find out new information from someone.
Okay. Then you got your PhD. What happened next?
Well, I then moved to the pharmaceutical drug industry. I did doing research for a postdoctoral study. But halfway through that, it's only 1 year in the United States because I immigrated to the United States to do so. I thought, no, this is very soul-destroying, spending 50% of my time in a library just reading journals and 50% of time in the laboratory. So I asked the management, look, is there an opportunity in management? And they said, yes, there is, but you'll have to immigrate to Mexico. So I asked my wife.
Mexico?
Yeah, because that's where they got the root that was used for making the steroids. So this company made 50% of the world's steroids, and it was made from a yam, a big yam called a barbasco root.
Oh, wow.
So we made all the birth control pills. We made all the topical corticoids, the cortisones, like prednisone, all of those sorts of things.
I'll just take your word for it. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Okay. So, anyway, well, they're all made from this root except for the heart steroids. Mm-hmm. So all of the normal body steroids, they're all made from this one yam.
So it sounds like tremendous success.
It was. So I was very...
academically and career-wise.
That's right. And so then they moved the whole organisation to back to the States again. Mm-hmm. And I got 3 promotions in a year, so I was a young executive, and so they sent me off to this young executives course. Mm-hmm. And they must have spent thousands of dollars on me. But one of the things that asked you to do was, why don't you think through where you're heading in life? Now, obviously, they were thinking about it in terms of the company. But I thought, I want to be a really good businessman. I want to be a really good Christian, and I want to be a really good family man. I had 2.5 kids at that stage.
2.5?
2.5, yeah. One was in the oven.
Oh, okay. Thank you for explaining that.
That's right. And so I thought, I can't do 3 things really well. I've got to cut it down somehow. So I can't give up Christianity. I can't give up family. But what about work? And I thought, well, I've got to combine work with Christianity. And so I came back from the course and resigned and decided I'd go into Christian work, and particularly Christian work with young people, because that was where I felt that I could make a contribution.
And what'd you do?
Well, I looked at the Bible colleges, theological colleges. I was already 30, and I thought, by the time I finish those, I'll be 33 or 34. I'll be starting to diminish in real effectiveness. So I thought, no, I can read all that stuff, but I want to get straight into Christian work. So I came back to Australia. I didn't feel that the United States needed any more experienced or academic type Christians. It was pretty rare in those days for Australian Christians to have PhDs. And so they were nowhere near as common as they are now. So I thought I'd come back and move into Christian work somewhere. Everything I applied for 4 different jobs. I got every one of them.
Oh, wow.
But one of them really, really stirred my heart, and that was the Scripture Union job. So it was called the General Secretary of Scripture Union in Queensland. Now, I didn't know what a General Secretary was, so I asked them to explain what a General Secretary was. It seemed a pretty stupid name to me. And anyway, they explained it to me, and it was really the CEO.
Oh, okay.
But it was very small. We had a $31,000 budget. We had 6 staff, or we had 5 staff. If you add me, it would be 6. And my heart leapt, because it was just perfect for what I'd done. I'd have experience in Scripture Union in New South Wales. So I went up there, and God remarkably blessed it. When I left there after 28 years, we had about 120 staff and about a $4.5 million budget.
Wow.
So God was extraordinarily good to us. And
God took this rebel.
He did.
And he used the
So I'm
rebel.
still a rebel, sort of, but much more moderated rebel, yes.
And you've always had a heart for university students. Tell us about that.
I have. Well, I guess because I did a Master's of Administration as well after that, and a counselling degree. So I've had a lot of time with university students. Plus, all the leaders on our camps and missions pretty well were people from university, though. Most of them were. And so I knew how they ticked to a large extent. And so when I finished with Scripture Union, I thought, well, I'll go right back to the beginning. And I'll just become an ordinary worker on the campus. And so I started at QUT, but there was only 2 of us. And one of them, he took the Kelvin Grove campus, and he left me on the Gardens Point campus. So there was just me. And there was one student that I connected with, plus 2 others that were phantom. They were supposedly connected, but they actually weren't. But we had this really committed student called Mark. And between the 2 of us, God built it up. At our maximum, we got to 120 students.
Wow.
And it was really, really exciting. Many people became Christians. A lot of them were discipled. And so it was just a wonderful opportunity. But then Campus Crusade is now called Power to Change. It recognised that I had previous experience, so it moved me onto the national leadership team of the organisation, which I became chair of, then onto the board, and then I became chair of the board. So now I do about 3 days a week on campus, mostly mentoring and discipling students. Some of them are non-Christians, and so I do some evangelism as well. But it's just a wonderful ministry, lots and lots of opportunities.
And now you're spreading the joy that found its way in your heart when you initially had evil in your heart when you went to that youth group.
That's right. And now, basically, I spend about 3 days a week doing ministry with university students, and then a couple of days a week preparing for boards and writing papers and things. So I sit on about 8 boards, and so that means I travel a fair bit to Melbourne and Sydney particularly. And that keeps me out of mischief.
8 boards, wow.
Well, I'm only 77. I've still got a few years in me, I hope.
Well, Jim Rawson, thank you so much for sharing your story with us today.
Okay, it's been wonderful, and thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Great to hear your story.
Thank you.
Well, it was great to hear how God completely changed the direction of Jim Rawson's life. As he said, when he was a young man, he was a bit bitter and twisted with revenge in his heart and not heading down a path that would look anything like success. But as we heard, God began to work in his life, and he eventually matured and went on to obtain a PhD in veterinary science and did postdoctoral work in the USA. He then went on to serve the Lord in a number of amazing ways, including doing outreach on university campuses aimed at others who are academically inclined as well. He's currently on the chair of the nationwide ministry known as Power to Change, previously known as Campus Crusade for Christ. For more information, or if you would like to contact Jim, the website is powertochange.org.au. That's powertochange.org.au. Well, thanks for joining us for Jim's wonderful changed life story. I'm Jimmy Colfax, encouraging you to share your story with someone today.
Next time on The Story.
I was robbed of my childhood at a very, very young age. I never spent time playing as most children do. I spent much of my time trying to find food on the streets, trying to take care of my sister, trying to survive. But now I was being given a chance to join other children and be freed from the burden of worry and care and hunger.
Richmond Wandara's life started off in the slums of Uganda, where his father was brutally murdered. This thrust him and his family into desperate poverty. But a remarkable change came about when he became a sponsored child with Compassion Australia. We'll hear his incredible success story next time.
The Story. Just another way Vision is connecting faith to life.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.